Hello, my name is Lauren with Wearing History Patterns and Wearing History blog, and today I'd like to tell you a little bit more about some of the Victorian patterns which I have available on my site. We're going to talk about Sophie here, which is the newest Victorian pattern, but we're also going to talk about a little bit about these individual size patterns which I offer on my site as e-patterns. You're going to find out what the difference is between this pattern and this pattern, but you're also going to find out the difference between home sewing patterns of the past and home sewing patterns that I offer today. Now, some people call my patterns reproductions, and that's not actually accurate, because when you're going to see what these come from, you'll understand why there's so much work behind them and what they are that I offer specifically. Sophie here comes from an original 1899 issue of La Mode Illustrée. You can see it here. I actually did pick this up on a trip in Paris, which I was very fortunate to find a stack of original period publications to add to my archives, and I really hope I can offer a lot of these in the future to my customers. Now, Sophie took a long time to make, and so did this one here, but I'll show you why there's a difference between the ones that I made them. This one here is an e-pattern. It's available currently in the single size only. There are no seam allowances included, but that actually does have a lot of benefits, and I'm going to show you that in a future post. But if you are interested in my patterns, you may note that the number of this one is R105, and the number between this one here, this is 1007. Now when you see the beginning number as 1 without an R in front of it, those are patterns that I have taken a lot of time to make, test them all out, make the notches match, make brand new instruction illustrations, and actually I also multi-size these. Now, home sewing patterns of the past were available in only single sizes, and that's something that's very important to note. Single-size patterns continued up until, I believe, the 1960s or 1970s, so multi-size patterns where they're stacked on top of one another are a relatively new innovation. And what I've just started doing recently is including all the sizes in one packet, where before I had 2 different size packs. The benefit of having all in one is that people that are between sizes can easily trace from one line to another to create their pattern piece so that they don't have to buy 2 size packs and then combine it into one. Now, patterns like this are offered single size currently. I'm not sure if I'm going to multi-size these in the future. It will depend on demand and what you guys want. But because these are a tester for me, it's a period that I'm just getting into with my patterns, though I have been creating garments of this time period for myself for many years. I want to make sure that you guys really understand what it is that I do behind these patterns. And I'm going to talk about the original Harper's Bazaars and how these patterns came about right now. Here we have a period Harper's Bazaar magazine from 1887. This is an original magazine. It includes different illustrations from the time period, but it also includes sewing patterns. I'm going to show you that pattern right here. To be careful because these are quite old. Now, the same type of pattern that's used in these Harper's Bazaars is the type that was used in the Mode Illustrée. And actually, I believe that certain companies in Europe still use this type of pattern because you can put a lot of different garments on one sheet of paper. But for those of us that are used to single size or multi-size, fully enlarged and graded sewing patterns, they can be a little bit intimidating. It took me a while to figure out how to use these properly, which is why I'm offering this service on my website of giving you individual patterns to make it a lot easier for the home sewers today to enjoy these different types of resources of the past. It's very delicate. You can see it looks like a road map, really. All of these different overlapping lines are the ones that would make all your different pattern pieces. So even though you get a lot of different designs on this one sheet, it's a lot of work. So what you would do is you would pick your design. Let's say we're going for this one in the upper corner here. And you would see that you would have to find the numbers that corresponded to the pieces and then find the pieces on the sheet. So your numbers may be up here, and then your numbers may be here. So you would then follow these lines all the way around until you would trace out your piece on a different set of paper. But once you get into the middle, it gets a lot harder to figure out where the pieces go and what you're supposed to do with them. Also, like mentioned before, this is all you would get for sewing instruction. There's no cutting charts, there is very little yardage. There's only one size included. There's no seam allowance at all. There's no markings on the pieces. There's no grain lines on the pieces. Every once in a while you get a roll line and possibly button placement, but that's about all you get. Now, because I'm so interested in the different histories of fashion, and I love historical cut and accuracy, I've decided to offer some of the ones that I have in my archive up for my customers on my website. Now, you know, they are a lot easier to understand than what you've just seen because I've separated them out into a single size, but they still retain all the historical accuracy. There is no seam allowance included, which actually does have its benefits that I'll go into in a different post. But if you're interested, you can get this one on my website currently, and I plan to offer more in the future. So this is one of the designs that was shown on a page similar to the one that I showed you. And it includes the original paragraph of instructions, but I also give you a chart that shows you the pieces that are included, and I also give you some tips on fitting and mock-up. So, you know, you can do this, and it's a lot easier because I give you some of the hints that I've accumulated throughout time that will help make these period garments for yourself. I also will tell you what size it is, and the old Harper's Bazaars that I have don't tell you what size the garments would be. Some of them might, but the ones that I've used so far have not. And that brings me to an interesting point. The patterns of the past like that, they were basically blueprints for you to make something that you wanted from an image. Now there's a big difference then, and there still is today, that your pattern pieces are your blueprint. They may tell you the basics of how to put something together, but there was a big difference then between a sewing pattern, which is that, and a sewing book, which is this. Now I really think that this is an important thing to remember because you cannot teach every single period technique in a sewing pattern. It's just not possible. You'd get a big fat book and people may or may not understand it. It would make the cost go up significantly. And really, I'm a one-person business here and I do what I can with what I can. But I think part of my job in my business is to educate people about how to use the patterns of the past. And for that reason, I still really suggest these sewing books. Now, the mode illustré, like this one here, this is where Sophie came from. This was an original period fashion magazine which had a large pattern sheet, which you're going to see. You actually saw the one that was included with the Harper's Bazaar, and this one is very, very similar. If anything, it's a little bit more confusing because there actually seems to be, to my eye, to be more garments included. Now this is the actual pattern sheet which this pattern was based off of. I did have to make some changes to this pattern because it just didn't match up completely the way that I thought it should. I also added a lot of different markings to the pattern, which nothing was included originally other than the roll line of the collar. Now, you can see that there's buttons. I did include the button placements on this. I added notches to the piece that you can see. There were darts of the sleeves included, but other than that, you got the basic pattern pieces. You didn't get told where to release the stitching, which I have included in my pattern, and I changed the instructions. One of the advantages of this pattern is that it can easily be used for modern wear or steampunk or historical accuracy like we have here. The collar is very high. You can make it stand up and back like that, frame your face. Or if you want something that's a little bit more modern, you can open up the collar and make it lie flat, which gives you a really nice portrait neckline that really looks really beautiful around your neck. You might really like this version actually. And in the instructions I tell a little bit about how to change your hooks and eyes. On this one here I have the hooks actually stitched on the inside, but they're visible when you flip the collar down. But if you want to make it so that you can make it convertible either way, you stick the hooks and eyes between the layers. In the future I'd like to do a couple of tutorials about how to make this jacket. Now I've rated it as an advanced pattern, but I really think that some intermediate sewers may be able to accomplish this because the hardest parts of this jacket are the collar and the hem here. And you can see that the design continues around to the back to have the scalp. You can also see a little bit about the period silhouette, which I did not alter in the least, so it retains all of the historical accuracy. Here we have the original pattern layout, which we had for the Sophie jacket, which actually was called the Autumn jacket. when this pattern was released. It seemed like every year of these Mode Illustré magazines there was an autumn jacket. So I decided to give it a period name, and while I looked up Victorian names, I thought Sophie was absolutely adorable, so that's what the jacket has as her name now. You can also see the original 2 paragraphs that were in French, and that's all you would get. And actually I had a friend help translate these, and all it was really telling you what sort of fabric to make it out of. There really wasn't any sewing instruction included at all. So when I came to do this pattern, you'll see in a few minutes here, that I included my own illustrations and instructions to help make it easier for you to understand. Here you can see the large road map style outlay of this pattern, which would be overlapping pattern pieces creating a lot of different designs. Now, I've done all this work for you when I did the Sophie pattern and transcribed all of these, added seam allowances, added markings, added grain lines, and all the things which were not originally included in this pattern. Now that you've seen what was included in the original pattern, you can see what difference there is between what I offer through Wearing History patterns and what there was originally. Here you can see the back cover of the Sophie jacket, and it includes your sizes and your size chart, which I actually have added from my own work. There was actually no yardage that was included in this, which was understandable for our sewing today. So I've included basic charts here for your yardages. Here you can see in the background, this is the way my pattern looks. Very, very, very different than the original source material. And I'm actually quite proud of the way that these have come out. It takes a lot of work and a lot of time, but it's really paying off in that I get to see people actually enjoy the patterns of the past that I make available now. Now I'm going to give you a glimpse inside of these instructions, which I don't do on my website, but I want you to see a little bit of how much work it takes for me to make these patterns available. Because it's not just a reproduction. People say that and it seems like they're just dismissing it as something easy to do. But it takes a lot of time and a lot of energy to make these patterns, and you'll see why. Here I give you basic tips on fitting and where to keep your eye on when you do your mock-up, so you can see areas that are checkpoints of what to look for and fit. We've got more here about construction. We've got your cutting charts. And here are my own hand-drawn illustrations showing you a little bit about how to put the basic pattern together. It goes through the whole thing, all of the different steps. I modeled these after what we come to expect in modern home sewing patterns. Most of my illustrations are hand-drawn right here. This is computer-drawn, and there's a couple more patterns which I offered mostly computer-drawn, but they were a little bit too time-consuming for me. And since Sophie took me nearly 3 years to get out, I figured I'd just get it out as soon as I could. So there's my little hand sketches for you. That's what you get with the instructions. A lot different than what it used to be. Now you can understand why. Now, if you're purchasing the Sophie pattern from me in printed mailed format, you're going to get a pattern sheet similar to this one. I currently print them up to 36 inches wide. You can see a little bit here, all the pattern pieces are stacked so that you get all of the sizes in one packet. And I print mine on good quality bond paper. I use a local mom and pop print shop because I really believe in supporting local businesses. And it's just, you can see a little bit of what goes into what I do, and you can see why it takes me so long to do all these different pattern releases. But I think you'll really enjoy this Sophie pattern. This is the one, like I said, in print format. The E pattern is composed of 8.5 by 11 or A4 size paper, which you print out and then you tile together by taping. And I'm going to show you that in a future video post as well. But if you're ordering the print one, it comes like this. I make sure they come in a clear Ziploc bag so you can keep all of your pieces together. This is about the thickness of the one that you'll get when you order this pattern from me. So you have a nice color cover, you have the instruction pack, and you have the pattern sheet in here. So it's a really nice little packet, I think. It's very durable, it's a lot easier to use than tissue paper, which rips very easily. But it also makes it heavier to ship, which is why I think a lot of people have been opting for the E-pattern version, especially if you're overseas. So I'm glad to be able to offer both of these. And I'm actually very happy that people seem to be interested in the history of fashion and interested in sewing it themselves. So I want to really thank you, all my customers, for supporting my small business. And if you have a chance, I'd love to see versions of this made up. You can buy the Sophie pattern from me. You can buy the Restovival patterns from me from the original period publications. And I'd love to be able to offer more of these in the future. So please, if you like, support my business by buying patterns at Wearing History. Thank you very much. Have a great day.